Greetings, majestic ones. We are back. And who are we? You guys already know. That's why you're here. But for those who might see this and hear this later who aren't familiar with us, I am Tombstone the Dead Man, and my broadcast partner is
Ray of Extropia. You
Ray of
already know.
Extropia.
Yeah, I cease to be grade and square on these. I can't be grade and square on these. I have to be grade.
I hear you. You know what? Absolutely. So you're talking to Malik, son of Memnon, the Lord of Entropy.
I love it.
Let's do that. It's been a little while since we put a Majestic Musings up here, but that's because there's been a lot of things happening, a lot of things going on, and we're just starting to really get settled now. But we wanted to catch up with you guys and give you some updates, let you know what's going on, and just generally, touch base with our investors, because you guys are very, very important to us, and we really appreciate everything you guys have done to help us get to this point, right?
Absolutely.
So it's funny because me and Graydon, when we get a chance to catch up, we talk about a bunch of stuff. One of the things we were talking about was just how much our interest have shifted and changed about the things that we do. Like, for instance, with me, people who've been following me for a long time, they know I typically walk with the music, come up with the song and everything there, and then go home and record it. And that's usually how, even if I'm not working on any projects, when I take my walks, I got a beat or whatever, some beats in my headphones or whatever. Currently, I haven't been really doing that. What I've been doing is listening to stuff about plot creation, lectures on world building, fiction in general, all of these things. Why? Because my entire being is being transported into the creation of this lore. So right now, what you're witnessing, even though it's just two of the triune, you know what I'm saying, right here.
By the way,
shout out to Big Struck. By the way, you're witnessing the evolution of our content, and it's amazing, even to us, to see.
And what's interesting about that is that even though our interests about a lot of the things that we've done have changed, I don't think that our passion for this project has changed at all.
No.
I think what has happened is I see the bigger picture in what we have that I never saw before.
Yes, sir.
I sometimes when you don't come from a place where you are normally configured to see things in a certain way, it's hard to recognize the value in something.
And you can't see the possibilities.
You can't
see the possibilities.
And then you're exposed to a certain dose of reality, and you're like, wait a minute. I didn't know we had this. Like, this is such a big deal.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I get it. And I know that doesn't, for a lot of people, that may sound like confusing.
Oh, cryptic.
Because I don't want to step on anything, but I feel like people are going to be so impressed in the future. As much as they're impressed with what we've done, the best is so much yet to come.
Oh, indeed.
When it comes to things like merch, and we're going to get on that in a second, to physical issues of the comic book that, we didn't realize were going to be as good quality as they were. And now it's like, we have a better quality comic book physically than most of the comic books I've ever held.
Yes.
And it's like,
amazing.
How did you figure that out? And, maybe people may disagree and that's their prerogative, but I feel like we're on to something that I got a big dose of, where it's like, okay, I really recognize the value in this.
Yeah. And bro, it's crazy because when I was talking to Big Struck earlier today, we reiterated the very real reality that we had a cheat code. We had these guys who've been supporting our music and our content for years. I have been interacting with other indies a lot since we started the company, since we officially started the company. I see the difference. Some of these guys, really, I would say 99.6 of these guys start off with no brand recognition at all, no brand awareness. No one knows who they are. They have an idea for a comic book, and they go with that. They follow their nose with that, and they don't have any funding, so they have to scrape and scrap and come up with stuff in order to make things. In other words, like my mom used to say, rob Peter to pay Paul to get the first issue out. We did not have that exact thing because we had a cheat code. We had the Majestic ones,
right?
Who already believed in us because they've been following our content for years. They've been and that's not something to be squandered, and that's why we put so much time, so much work into this stuff right here, because I can see where it can lead, and really the limits are really up to us, right? It's really up to us.
I totally agree with you. And there's something interesting too, as I do want to shift this conversation into a topic that we wanted to cover, which is the merchandise aspect of this.
Yes.
We've talked about certain aspects of merch that we've wanted to approach, and I know we've talked about action figures and stuff like that.
And we've gotten feedback from you guys, very helpful feedback from you guys.
Absolutely, absolutely. But before we even get to that, I know almost everybody who had ordered in the initial kind of rush for these hoodies and t-shirts.
It looks so badass. Yo, I'm looking at you I'm looking at your picture. It looks so badass right now.
Yeah, and everybody has really given us, I've not heard one negative review about the quality, about the print. Everyone has basically been like, yo, this is like, it's like, it's crazy. It's like,
yeah,
life, you know what I mean? Like the quality of these have been tremendous. And so we're very proud that we were able to put out this product and be able to satisfy our hardcore Majestic ones.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, it's like you guys are the ones we're trying to market, and we're trying to give you the greatest experience with our product.
Absolutely.
But having said that, it's like we also want to do so many different things that may not be clothing related. They may be children's toy related, right? They may be action figure related, board game related. We really want to do a board game. We've been talking about a board game for a year now or whatever, and it's been one of the things that I know Big Struck is very passionate about. I would totally play Majestic, extra P.
He wants us to, right? He wants us to schedule a time to try it out. So yeah,
I'm with that. I'm totally with that. So anyway, I say all that to say this: the vision that we have as far as merchandise is heavily influenced by what you guys want.
Yeah.
And so if you guys do have ideas, maybe things that are in our blind spot that we're not able to see, don't hesitate to hit us up and let us know in the comment section. Like, listen, this is what I want to see from you guys. You may talk about all that other stuff. All I want is this.
Right.
And you know what? We're probably going to provide that because it's a big interest of mine to see kind of where we could go with the brand recognition of Majestic Comics.
Absolutely.
I believe that we could be an Image or a Dark Horse. Like
absolutely.
I understand that now.
Without question.
Maybe I didn't before. I was just like, oh yeah, it's just our comic book and it's our comic book company. No, this is so much bigger. We just happen to start the shit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's big. It's bigger than that. And, connected to that, of course, is the connection that the readers, especially the first readers that have had a chance to read our book, their connection to the characters, their connection to the story, all of that stuff is important because that's what drives people to want to wear the shirts, want to have the keychains, want to drink out of the mug with extra P and entropy on it. They're going to want to do that because it's the story and it's the characters. And this is the part I'm telling you, much like in music, I always had to make the separation between what the art, my concerns for the art and concerns for the business side of it. While I'm creating, it's all about the art. While we're writing these stories, while Joseph is drawing this backdrop and creating the walls of reality that we work within, it's about the art. And that art really showed to me how devastatingly good it was when we put that cover on a shirt. We
Yeah,
put
no,
that
it's
cover
crazy.
on a hoodie. It's insane, bro. It's
It's so
absolutely
silly.
insane. So we got more
Um,
stuff coming.
Absolutely. Do you want to talk about a little about issue 1?
Oh, okay. So here's the thing, guys. So in truth, issue 0 is not fully launched. You guys have it because you're our folks, you're our
Early
investors,
adopters, right?
early adopters, right? You guys have it. But for the larger audience, no one has it yet. And we're going to get around to that. We'll talk about a little later, the Kickstarter and everything like that to build awareness of the product outside of our immediate audience. But it's so surprising how, first of all, we wrote so much material when we first came with the story that we had enough for 3 issues and didn't know
We
it.
actually have enough for more than that,
Right.
but
And
we
didn't
just
know it.
were able to get down like 3.5 issues in
Yes.
our initial writing block, which was
Absolutely.
years ago, which was literally years ago.
Yeah. And it's crazy how that combined with Strux, yo, he's been very efficient because I was under the impression that issue 1, we wouldn't have that anywhere near close to done until like summer. But I'm telling you guys that a huge chunk of the production is already done. It's already done.
Right.
And listen, it's amazing. We're not going to give you guys any spoilers, but I got to tell you, we've always talked about Gravitropia, Lord Entropy, because these are the 2 main characters in this story arc, right? But what's truly amazing to me is what we've managed to do with the other supporting cast,
right?
And how we choose to elevate them, and they get elevated in a really cool way in issue 1, and it was absolutely necessary for us to do because what you don't want with any of these stories, what I'm learning about this is what you don't want is for there to only be 1 or 2 interesting characters in your lore. Nah, absolutely not. And we don't have that. We have a plethora of characters. The way certain things the cast, and I know you guys, I've talked to you guys about your takes on the comic book on issue 0 and everything. You see the cast, you see what his personality type is like. The things we're going to do with the cast is going to boggle your mind. The things we're going to do with Malari and Chaos is going to boggle your mind.
And what I will say is that we also get our first real I don't even know how to say this without spoiling it, but we get our first kind of larger ontological hint.
Yes.
At things.
Yes.
And I guess that's a safe way to say it, right?
It basically, with whatever you guys saw in issue 0, we open up that universe, that reality so much more in issue 1 that it's insane. And the implications of issue 1 match, if not exceed, the implications of issue 0.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I don't want to. I'm not. I never want to poo-poo or shit on issue 0 in any kind of way, right? No. But issue 1 is a better issue as far as story-wise.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
It opens up as to like, okay, well, what happens?
Right.
And you could get into a larger story as to like, okay, now this is going on as a result of what happened in issue 0.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of things that we have to continue on from issue 0 that we started with, right? Like there's a lot of mentions. There were people who had appearances that then
setups
also had those setups had to be paid off in a bit, and then
that's right,
not too paid off because they had to lead into the next part of the story.
Right.
So it's like I feel like issue 1 is a much more interesting read in the context of like story progression because it builds upon what we had, and if you read it in the dialogue that we set there, we set up a lot of stuff that I feel like we paid off in this issue.
Absolutely.
We also expanded out into greater story. So
absolutely, imagine if you will, you're in a house, and your house is a nice size house, and you like your house, then you open that front door to a wider world. That's the analogy I'm giving y'all. But that's the connection between issue 0 and issue 1. You open up to a wider world, and it's so amazing to see. And let me ask you this: what was your so we wrote this stuff, we had a vision of what we wanted it to be like, to look like. But so much of this work is about collaboration. So it's our ideas, characters we created, the story we came up with how Structure envisions it when he reads it, when he sees it, he puts it down. So even though we know the story, didn't you feel like you were seeing it for the first time the moment he started creating the actual art on paper? Because that's how I felt.
Every time I read issue 0, I feel like I'm reading it for the first time. Every time I now am reading issue 1, I'm reading it, right? And it hits me like the first time I read it, every time I read it.
Yeah.
And that's the type of impact that I want for our stories, which is like, yeah, it's going to hit you when you obviously read it. But then every time you come back, I want that same impact because it's written as well as we hope that it is.
Absolutely.
So,
it's one of these things because, like I said, to be able to put the dialogue, the story itself, the text next to the realized art, it changes things. It adds another layer, just same way it did for me in issue 0. To actually be able to see the artwork from the word bubbles to the landscapes and the character models matched up with the story, it brings it to light, especially to somebody like me who's been reading comic books forever. And if you'd have told me back when I was 13, right, that I would have a comic book company now with my brothers, right, I would not have believed. I would have wanted it because I did, but I would have not believed it.
We might have had this conversation a long time ago, but it was never on record, I don't think. Did I ever tell you that I used to write like these like really shitty type of Tom Clancy type stories when I was like 14?
No, for real?
Oh my goodness. I could have swore we had this conversation.
Planting the seeds of your fiction writing.
But my problem was that I'd read too much damn Tom Clancy. So I tried to write like him, and I was just all descriptive about shit, but I didn't understand the shit that I was describing because I was 14.
Right.
So
Right.
I've never held, and bullets I've never seen and shit like that. But I'm trying to write this shitty story.
Right.
It wasn't good. But I remember then thinking like, I wonder if I could actually write something worth reading one day. Even then, I thought that was probably a shitty story, and I thought maybe one day I'll write a better story. But
practice makes perfect. Nah, bro. Look, I wrote a little fiction back when I was younger too. Of course, I was much younger. I was like, I think I started writing little sci-fi stories, little short sci-fi stories that weren't worth a damn, if I'm to be honest, when I was like 10 or some shit like that, writing down stuff. And I was always good in English class. Like that was always the highest grade. My highest grades were always in that sort of thing. So I was always reading a lot because my mom's and my grandfather, this was something that they pushed on me, my sister, and my brother. So I was reading a lot of fiction back then as well. And I just had a love of that. And the fact that, they used to say all the time, if the writer's good enough, he can paint pictures in your head, even if there isn't any pictures on the pages. And that would happen to me all the time with good books. All the time with good books. So
if you listen to a good storyteller, it'll happen.
Yes.
Like someone who can tell a good story, you're like imagining their version of that story from their perspective. It's very
absolutely different. Your imagination will do the heavy lifting in that case. And the thing about the comic space is that it doesn't really have to. What happens is your imagination goes even further because now that the comic book itself has the story, it has the art. Now what your imagination starts taking you to is the possibilities of where it can go, what's
Right.
going to happen next. What is this? How is this character going to get out of this particular conundrum that he or she is into? Now your imagination goes to those things because the first two layers are already covered. It's another dimension now. It's a whole nother dimension. And I feel like that's what we do with this book, particularly because of the themes that we write about with this story arc. Those themes capture imagination. And it's so crazy because I'm watching so much science shit too now.
Oh
Because
yeah.
I'm watching a lot of stuff about the cosmos and different things because I am literally grabbing fuel. Not unlike what you used to say when you were about to go into a project, a music project, and you would just read a ton of books, just reading a lot,
You just bury yourself.
feeding your brain.
Yeah, you just gorge
Yeah.
on information. You're just like a tribble. You're a fat
Oh,
just gorged.
the reference.
It's still Trek forever.
It's so
But
Trek.
yeah. So it's interesting. That kind of leads us into the next phase of this conversation, which is the Kickstarter campaign.
Yes.
And I think the reason why this is even, something that we would even want to do and we would even think necessary, kind of goes back to the original video I put out that was a Indiegogo campaign, right?
Yeah.
Which was the Summer's Ending
Yep.
video, right? And I remember it was the only crowdfunding campaign I ever did. And the people who funded it and everything, that was perfect. Like it was no issue. It was a weird fallout with me and the video guy, and we never spoke again. It was weird. But
Wow.
yeah. But it was something that ultimately a lesson that I learned as a young artist of how to do business, and I didn't understand that. I just was too young and raw at it,
Right.
and I just fumbled shit. I fucked up a lot of good business relationships, but it taught me a lot of good business lessons.
Yeah.
And one of those things is when you crowdfund something, people have a certain ownership to it, right?
Right.
And we did that originally with the
Patreon.
Patreon, which is great, and it allowed us to create a good working fan base that we can give content to every month.
Right.
But then we asked the question, well, how do we recreate that? Right?
Yeah.
How do we recreate that without actually stepping on the toes of the patrons that already contribute?
And also to how do we repeat that to a wider audience? Because at the end of the day, that is the goal for people outside of our regular audience to discover the book and fall in love with it and want to support it.
Yeah, I was actually and that's almost the best benefit about something like Kickstarter is that when people feel that ownership to it, it's most likely going to come from outside of your immediate circle.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I think that is something that happens more on Kickstarter and Indiegogo than it happens on, let's say, Patreon. Patreon is very internal,
self-contained.
Self-contained within your own network, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's great. It's
great. It's actually great. Yeah, it's actually great. But I think with Indiegogo and Kickstarter, these are designed to attract strangers.
Yeah.
Right. We want that because we want a lot of people who are, may not be Majestic or Grand Unified related or adjacent in any kind of way to be introduced to the product as well. So we want
absolutely
that
and it builds up the hype, and it's become the norm in indie circles,
especially comics.
In comics, because
we had to do it that way.
We had to because a lot of these indies, they do Kickstarters for every issue because they don't have immediate funding until they can build their company up. I've seen them do numerous Kickstarters for this issue, Kickstarter for that issue. And what it does, the benefit of it is, of course, is the exposure that it gets you. It gets you exposure from all these other people who may never even heard of a Tombstone the Dead Man or Graydon Square in their life. It continues to build the hype around the project. And it's something that's important to do if you really want to further the name recognition. This is how it works. It's funny because the way comic book companies used to operate is long gone. that old style of business that they were doing, that died a long time ago.
I
So
just imagine Shredder just being like, "You fight well."
you like like nah, bro. Like they don't do it that old way anymore. This, as a matter of fact, what you'll find on Kickstarter now is established comic book writers who've worked for big companies that have their own individual projects out, and they use a Kickstarter to get it going, right? So and they keep it going. So it's become the norm in the industry, particularly in the side of the industry that we're on, to do this. And this also helps us out with the printing issue, because much of the things we use the funding for is legal and production and things of that nature. But when it comes to printing a certain amount of books and getting a certain amount and a certain type of book, that's done, because we're not even just talking about only doing the standard version of a comic book. We're talking about doing different. I don't want to spoil it right now, but we're talking about, doing certain types of that you guys are going to see and go, whoa, that's badass. Right.
Yeah.
But that also requires money for us to be
Yeah.
able to do that. So,
I
it's
guess I didn't mean to interrupt you, Stone.
no, go ahead.
What I was going to say is it just really just iterates on the point that the experience that we want to give people is the best experience, and we want to pay a premium for that experience. So
Yeah.
whether it's, the physical comic book, which we want to offer through the Kickstarter campaign,
Yes.
but other things that people might be interested in that are Kickstarter or crowdfunded related, right?
Right.
Like, creation of a character or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
being able to kind of work with this and telling a story or something, being able to write a story. A lot of different tiers we could do, where it's like these were things we can't really offer in a Patreon campaign,
Right.
but we can offer in a Kickstarter campaign.
Absolutely.
So, when we
Stretch
were going
goals
through,
and all of that.
yeah, exactly, stretch goals and all that stuff. And we were talking about this initially when we were doing the Patreon campaign about what we would consider Kickstarter or crowdfunding and what we would consider a monthly support system for the fans.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's pretty much the norm. And one good thing that came out of this for me, so as much as I've been reading comics forever, there's a difference between reading and being involved in the mainstream comics and in that indie world, right? So starting this company forced me inside that indie world more, because I read some indie comics coming up, but it wasn't anywhere near the amount of a Marvel, DC, and the Image. It wasn't anything as much as that. But now I find myself not only reading more of those, but just like I like to research what I'm doing, and I like to see what the competition is doing, and see where we fit in with that. See what the differences is with what we're doing, and what applies to us, and what they're doing, and why it works or doesn't work for them. And as I did that, that's when I immediately saw, that's the first thing you'll see when you join these comic book groups and people are sharing their thing, they're sharing their Kickstarters. It's part of the norm, right? So, and it's a great way to get people outside. Like I said, we had a cheat code. You guys, we had a cheat code, but we still need to reach people outside of our immediate audience. That in order for this to grow, in order for us to get to the point where we're doing animation, we have to reach a larger audience.
And if you really want to look at it big picture perspective, if this is also an extension of Grand Unified, then Grand Unified itself is going to grow as a culture and a community as Majestic Comics grows, because Majestic Comics is, an outgrowth of Grand Unified creativity. So this is where there's that synergy that always exists in the culture, and that we always have the ability to expand and grow and be able to influence other people into like checking our stuff out. Like, hey man, we actually have a community of people who are into this shit. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And it's amazing because, like we said before, sometimes you got to game the algorithm. So clearly when you're dealing with other larger business entities, they don't care about the story. We talked about this before with the Black Sands experience when they went on the shark thing.
Shout out Black Sands.
Shout out Black Sands. Kevin Hart didn't read the story. Kevin Hart looked at the numbers.
Yeah, he did.
You already got a readership. Oh, you got a consumer base. if you want to get to a point in this industry where you can get the bigger advantages, more opportunities, stuff like that, the numbers got to speak for you. And really, I would say almost any industry, like even if you're a YouTuber, you want to get sponsorship on your YouTube channel, show them the numbers. They got to know that a significant amount of people actually care about the content that you're producing.
Agreed.
Yeah. So we have to get our numbers up.
And the only thing I would say that I would clarify is I don't necessarily know if I would articulate it as gaming the algorithms in this particular sense, because I do feel like if you have a good enough product.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And no, I'm not saying you weren't saying that. I'm simply saying that in a lot of ways, for people who are trying to compensate for the lack of good quality, they may feel like they have to gain. That is a very true thing.
Right.
But I also feel like if you got good enough quality, and somebody like Black Sands or other indie comics out there who have had good quality, have blown up independently, I think you can get on. Like the algorithm will kind of show the interest in itself. If you do it right and you grow organically and you're on your shit, the algorithms will show that shit.
It's a fact. And like I said, like these larger entities that provide funding and opportunities you can make deals with, there are people that they send to negotiate with you. Some of them are going to read the story, some of them are not. They're going to say, show me your interest. Yeah, show me the interest. Who's interested in this? Because they want to know whether or not they can sell it. They want to know whether or not it's worth them putting their name on the line to give it that push. So
a lot of people are also thinking, like, in what way does this benefit my life? I'm going to spend money on it in a time where shit costs more money.
Yeah.
Right. Like not everybody has more, expendable income and that sort of stuff.
Right.
And that's why we're so appreciative to the people who support us.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, if you're going to say, hey, I'm also going to start a Kickstarter campaign or any type of campaign which requires people to, purchase anything from you or support you with money, they're going to want to know how it makes their life better. They're going to want to know how it benefits them. And so from either an entertainment value or intellectually stimulating value or artistic value, whatever we present to people, we want to be able to say, hey, listen, we're going to give you the best quality of that within this realm, under this property, this IP.
Absolutely.
You'll never have to worry about it. Is like, are we skimping on this? Are we trying to give you a less than subpar experience?
Right.
And that, along with a great story, along with continuous content, I feel like should, grow the company and grow the brand in a way that people would feel proud of being on the early levels of. Like, hey, I was
absolutely
on the first, Kickstarter campaign. Think about like Star Citizen. And I know Star Citizen is very polarizing, right? But Star Citizen had a Kickstarter campaign, right? I got in when the crowdfunding was like 18 million, but it had just left Kickstarter. It left Kickstarter at like 12 million or something.
I got in right after you because you put me onto it.
Yeah, it was me and you got in literally at the same time. And so I remember at 18 million thinking, damn, I wish I got into the Kickstarter campaign. Right?
Right.
The Kickstarter campaign you could have bought for like $2,000.
They was giving people stuff. Yeah, they was giving
every shit ever. It was like you for life. And so I feel like this is also one of those times where we can kind of create that level of like interest where you're at the ground floor of this company where we've created these interesting characters and this interesting story and hopefully this interesting content, and then also be able to support that in a crowdfunding sort of way.
Absolutely. And I gotta say, of all of the things that I have been connected with, especially since I'm gonna say 2010, but I would even go so far as to say even before then, this is the thing that I feel most at home with. Like this is the coming up with these stories, these ideas, researching for it, and then we see the product of our imaginations being realized, and you look at it and go, wow, we did this.
Yeah.
Sometimes to the point where it's like, damn, did we do this?
I remind myself, like, really, like, damn, I actually created these characters.
You're right.
Like, I had a hand in creating this reality.
Yeah.
This reality in which these characters have these fantastic tales and interesting lives, and
Ventures and all of that.
it's it's very you feel very godlike.
Yo, and that's why I've been referring to us lately as the triune.
Yeah,
Said,
you definitely feel it because when you create a reality with a story and characters, and you have ultimate control over these characters' lives, and you do kind of develop
pretty intoxicating.
yeah, you have a creative god complex that I think you have to work out. Everybody has it. Like when they create
Yes.
something, it's like it's mine. To be able to control and whatever. And yeah, it's very very.
It's pretty crazy when you think about it. I will say this, and you'll probably hear me say this again. Majestic Comics, the only Trinity that matters. The only Trinity that matters, bro. What? No, man. Yeah, facts. Facts, man.
That's fresh.
I want what I want is for us to continue to be able to continue doing this. Because I talked about this before. Comic book creation, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
A lot of y'all that did grow up reading comic books, when y'all start collecting them, one story y'all could be 20 goddamn books. Right? It's a marathon. And within that, like that whole story arc, there's so many lessons, so many things that I took with me into rap. Like that's how important comic books was to me. If there was, I remember when I was a kid, if there were words in the comic book that I did not understand, I immediately went to look it up because I wanted to understand the story better.
Good for that shit. It was almost. I feel like comic books were the best place for kids to learn new words.
Yes.
Like if you were a kid and you wanted to learn some new weird ass words, you could show up at school and say "fuck up" saying them all. Right. For a long time, for like maybe from the 4th grade to the 6th grade, I thought that the word ballistic was balastic. I would just say that shit. This shit is balastic. I have no, you know what I'm saying? Like, and you forget where you read it because you're some kid. You don't know any better.
You're just picking up stuff from everywhere, right? Right. That's hilarious. No, but also very, very, very relatable, bro. Very, very relatable. And that's why, like I said, man, I'm super excited about this. And typically when I'm super excited about some creative endeavor, the result of it usually is something that I am super proud of and want heavily for a lot of people to be able to check out and read. So with that, the same passion that we put into our music is being poured into this, because this umbrella of Majestic Comics has the ability to cover all of that, our music as well as this fiction writing thing. And it's just I'm having the time of my life with it. I'm not gonna hold you. When y'all see me post pictures where I'm rocking the shirt, or a picture where I'm standing across from Lord Entry, I am living my Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko dream right now,
And like you said earlier, this isn't ever meant to be a sprint. It's meant to be a marathon. So these stories are gonna keep coming out. Like we're done issue 1, we're working on issue 2. We're gonna do, and they're gonna come in arcs. And so we're gonna tell this story as an arc, and then this arc should hopefully, conclude and have resolution, and then set up the next arc as well.
That's
and
right.
So there'll always be stories within the Majestic Comics universe to tell. I would love to bring on new writers and bring on people's characters and stuff like that. Like we want this to be something that outlives us.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, this is not just ours; it's also you guys's. So
the
ownership
the Majestic
is
ones,
not just within ourselves, but
especially that first 100. Their names will be on everything, on everything we do.
Yeah, we're gonna sneak them into everything. That first 100 group is they're pretty lucky.
Yeah, and we appreciate everything that you guys have done up to this point to help support what we're doing, and we promise that we're in this for the long haul, and we're going to do our damnedest to give you the highest quality we are able to attain. And the more resources we're able to get, the higher the quality will go, right? So that's pretty much, I think, it for this particular episode. Once again, I want to shout out my man Big Struck. He's doing a fantastic job. I cannot wait for y'all to see some of these pages. Issue 1.
That, you know, the double spread.
My goodness,
that one is outrageous. That one is outrageous.
I want that. I would
want it on my wall.
Move some of these out of the way.
No, for
just
sure.
To put that in there.
Yeah, that's got to be on my wall. It's got to be framed on my wall. That scene, and then the Graham Malari scene.
Oh my goodness!
Both those. They both have to be on my wall.
It has to happen. It has to happen. But anyway, for my man Struck and my brother Gray of Extropia, I am Tombstone the Dead Man. We are Majestic Comics. You are the Majestic ones, and we will talk to you guys later. Thanks again.
Peace.